So I hope you're still with us. Yeah, you have no choice. It's raining outside. So you're our captive audience. You have to stay with us until 6 o'clock tonight because we still have some interesting lectures for you. Again, for those who are interested, copies of the lectures will not be distributed today, but they will be uploaded to the PFB website so you can see the website and take a look at everything. We will tell you when they will be available. So moving on, our next speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Mindanao, Davao City. She holds a master's degree in Public Administration from the Jose Rizal University in Mandaluyong City. She joined the Maternal and Child Health Service of the Department of Health, Manila in February 1994 as a computer programmer, then as Health Program Officer, before moving to the National Center for Disease Prevention and Control at the Department of Health as Senior Health Program Officer. At present, she is the Supervising Health Program Officer of the same office, where among her numerous functions are the development of policies, projects, programs, and guidelines for the expanded program on immunization, and ensuring that policies are disseminated at all levels. She also provides technical assistance and advisory services to CHDs, the UNICEF, the WHO, partner agencies, and other stakeholders related to the EPI program. To speak on handling and storage of vaccines, please welcome the key person who is responsible for overall cold chain management at the Department of Health, Engineer Luz Belinda C. Garcia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody are still willing to listen to my presentation. Okay, so okay. Ayaw nga dito. Okay, before I proceed with the cold chain discussion, I would like to share with you the current immunization schedule for infants at the National Immunization Program. So this is the current immunization schedule for infants and women under the EPI program. These 9 types of vaccines are procured annually by the Department of Health locally and through UNICEF procurement system using the Government of the Philippines funds. Pentavalent vaccine or the DPT Hep B HIV was introduced in 2010, but only in 3 regions, Region 6, Region 7, and Caraga. This year is the nationwide implementation of these vaccines. In terms of the rotavirus vaccine, we procured only 700,000 or 1.4 million doses this year because the target for these rotavirus vaccines are for the infants under the National Household Targeting System for poverty reduction of the National Social Welfare Development. But because of the low uptake, we instructed all our EPI coordinator to give it all to the eligible infants. And hopefully next year, we will introduce the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine for infants. If you will look at the MMR schedule, in the National Immunization Program, we give it at 12 months because we want the mother to remember the second dose of the measles-containing vaccine during the first birthday of their child. mas madali siyang ma-recall ng mother if it is at 1 year old. Okay, I'll now proceed with the topic on the cold chain. When we say the cold chain, it's a means for storing and transporting vaccines in a potent state from the manufacturer to the person being immunized. Cold chain is a very important component of our immunization program since all vaccines lose potency over time, especially if exposed to heat and when frozen. So we have 3 elements of the cold chain: the personnel, the equipment, and the procedures. When we say personnel, those are who use and maintain the equipment and provide the health services. The equipment are for safe storage and transportation of our vaccines. And then the procedures is to manage the program, control the distribution, and use of the vaccines. Competent personnel and efficient procedures are vitally important part of the cold chain system. Standard equipment for storage and transportation of vaccines are also essential for an efficient cold chain system. So this is a typical cold chain system showing the various steps which may be involved in delivering vaccine from the manufacturer to the person being immunized. So the international manufacturer will deliver the vaccine to our national store, which is the RITM, but the national will not deliver vaccine to the region unless the region will order the vaccine. That's the time that the national will deliver the vaccine. Not all countries have an identical system, but the vaccine must always be maintained at a safe temperature throughout its entire journey. During transport, while waiting at the airport, when being kept in cold store, freezer or refrigerator, and finally, during the course of an immunization session at the health centers. So these are some of the characteristics of the vaccines. So we know that vaccines are delicate biological substances that are sensitive to heat and freezing. Vaccine lost their effectiveness when exposed to incorrect temperature, and once the vaccine has lost its effectiveness, it is impossible to restore it. Vaccines must always be kept at correct temperature all the time from their manufacturing under their administration. So these are the recommended temperature ranges for vaccine storage. For our oral polio vaccine, at the national, we store it at the -15 to -25 degrees centigrade up to the provincial level. But at the RHU level, we recommend them to store it at the +2 degrees centigrade to +8 degrees centigrade. For the other vaccines of the API, the recommended temperature at +2 to 8 at all levels. WHO no longer recommends that freeze-dried vaccine be stored at -20 degrees centigrade. But they recommend that this vaccine can also be stored at the +2 to +8 degrees centigrade. So we have vaccines that are very sensitive to heat, and we have also vaccines that are very sensitive to cold. So those vaccines that are sensitive to heat is the OPV vaccine. But vaccines that are sensitive to cold is really the hepatitis B vaccine. So once the vaccines are exposed to excessive heat or excessive cold, they may lose its potency. In terms of the diluents, diluents contain chemical and additive to stabilize the specific vaccine after reconstitution. As discussed by Dr. Tabora this morning, diluents are not interchangeable. Diluents made by one manufacturer for use with a certain vaccine cannot be used for reconstituting the same vaccine produced by another manufacturer. Diluents must never be frozen or allowed to be in contact with any frozen surface to avoid breakage and contamination. We have also the multi-dose vial policy, wherein the vaccine may be used in a subsequent session for 4 weeks. Vaccines that applies to the multi-dose vial policy are the OPV, DPT, tetanus toxoid, hepatitis B, and pentavalent vaccine. This vaccine can be used up to 4 weeks, provided the following conditions are strictly followed. First, expiry date has not passed. Vaccines are stored under appropriate cold chain conditions. Vaccine vial septum has not been submerged in water. Aseptic technique has been used to withdraw all doses. VVM, or the vaccine vial monitor, has not reached its discard point. And the date when the vaccine vial was opened is indicated in the vial. At the national and the regional store of the Department of Health, these are the existing cold chain equipment for vaccine. At the national store, we have the walk-in freezer designed to keep very large quantities of polio. And we also have what we call the cold room, where a refrigerating unit generates and maintains the temperature condition between positive 228 to positive 8 degrees centigrade required to cool the vaccines. It is used for storage of large quantities of vaccine between positive 0 degrees centigrade to positive 8 degrees centigrade temperature. At the provincial and city vaccine store, we have this different cold chain equipment for the storage of vaccines nationwide. Different levels of cold chain require different types and sizes of cold boxes required to the population served. We have also the cold box, we call that one the cold box, which is designed for collection and transport of large quantities of vaccine, storage of vaccine during maintenance, and storage of vaccine during breakdown of cold chain equipment and power failures. Vaccine carriers are storage and transport of vaccine to their catchment areas and storage of vaccine during immunization session. At the RHU level, we have this what we call the domestic refrigerator and the ice line refrigerator. Some of the RHU have the ice line refrigerator, but some only use the domestic refrigerator. Although not specifically designed for this purpose, this type of refrigerator is often used for storage of vaccine at the health center level. We have different types of computerized temperature monitoring for our cold rooms. We call this one the multi-lab. Maintaining the correct temperature during storage and transport of vaccine is a critical task of the health workers. Temperature must be regularly maintained and recorded in order to ensure storage of all vaccine at the correct temperature and also to ensure correct operation of the cold chain equipment. At the national and regional level, all equipment are equipped with this device called the multi-log. This is a 24/7 monitoring device to ensure temperature are in the recommended temperature. These are the temperature monitoring device used at the RHU level. So we have the dial thermometer and also the temperature monitoring chart. So all vaccine refrigerators are provided with thermometers and temperature reading carried out at the start of the day and end of the day every working day. So meaning the health workers are required to monitor the temperature of the vaccine at the storage twice a day, one in the morning and in the afternoon. And they have to plot the reading in the temperature monitoring charts, which is posted near the vaccine refrigerator. Maintaining correct temperature during vaccine storage and transport is critical for health workers. Temperatures must be regularly measured and recorded to ensure vaccines store at correct temperature and to ensure the correct cold chain equipment operation. Another device in monitoring our vaccine is the vaccine vial monitor. The vaccine vial monitor is a new type of temperature monitoring applied directly to each vaccine vial by the manufacturer. It enables the health worker to verify at the time of use whether vaccine is in usable condition and has not lost its potency and efficacy due to high temperature exposure. The VBM progressively changes color when exposed to heat over a period of time. All vaccines in the discard point based on the VBM readings needs to be discarded appropriately. So all our EPI vaccines have vaccine vial monitor attached to each vial or ampule. So this is one of the specifications that we really indicated when we procure our vaccines. So what are the benefits of VBM in our vaccines? So it will give confidence for the reuse open vial of vaccine. It is also potential for a large decrease in vaccine wastage and to give the health workers positive indication that he or she is administering potent vaccines. So it is usually placed at the body of the vial or at the cap or tip of the vial. So that's the location of the VBM. For those who haven't seen the VBM, in the RHU or at the Department of Health, all our vaccines have VBM. So also we have some procedures in determining if the vaccine are exposed to freezing. So we have called the vaccine shake test. We determine whether the absorbed vaccines have been frozen, and these are the following procedures in doing the vaccine shake test. The step one is first the health worker has to prepare a frozen control sample and he or she has to place it in a freezer or a refrigerator at the degrees centigrade, 10 degrees centigrade. And then step two, she has to choose a test sample. The test sample of the vaccine suspected frozen should be of the same vaccine type with the same manufacturer and the same lot number. So then she have to do the shake test for 10 to 15 seconds, the control and the sample test, and then allow it to rest for 15 to 30 minutes and then compare the two vials. After freezing, the vaccine is no longer in a uniform cloudy liquid. It forms flakes, which gradually settle to the bottom after the vial has been shaken. Sedimentation occurs faster in a previously frozen vial than a never frozen vaccine. So if the sediments in the suspected vial settle more slowly, then the vaccine will still be used. But if the sediments in the suspected vial settle at the same rate, then the vaccine may not be used. And I think this is my last slide. In terms of the safe immunization, so immunization safety really requires for health workers to have a safe and potent vaccines, safe injection practices, and adequate sharp waste disposal. And lastly is the rapid action when adverse events following immunization occurs. Thank you very much.
Again, may I call on Dr. May Monteliano and Dr. Fabay to present the Certificate of Appreciation and Storage of Vaccines. So a round of applause for Engineer Luz Garcia. So at this point, we have gone through a lot from this morning to now, and I hope you will agree with me that our main objective of presenting a comprehensive training course on basic principles of vaccinology have been met. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to give you a synopsis of what we just went through for day one. So we started with the first lecture of Dr. Bravo, giving us the history of vaccines from the time of Edward Jenner to the present time, when we now have 29 vaccine-preventable diseases. And as Dr. Bravo has reiterated, vaccines indeed do not save lives. It is vaccination that does. Then we moved on to the lecture of Dr. Monteliano, who spoke on basic vaccinology, explaining primarily principles of immunology as they apply to the use of vaccines. And then we had our keynote speaker, Dr. Suzette Lazo, talking about the challenges of vaccinating in areas of limited resources, wherein she talked about safety issues, issues of pricing of vaccines, problems with regards to shifting of sources of these vaccines from purely US-made to other sources. She talked about differences in the public health needs of developed versus developing countries, and the need to educate parents, the public, and the media. She ended with reiterating the need to develop and strengthen linkages while adopting the highest level of scientific know-how at every step of addressing these challenges. And on that light, we proceeded to our workshops, simultaneous workshops, where we tried to address the challenges of creating and or strengthening these linkages by either partnering with our organizations, civic organizations, the NGOs, the PhilHealth, talking about how the medical and the paramedical societies can help to strengthen this advocacy. And finally, talking about vaccine policies and programs of the LGUs, as well as the challenges and strategies that we can implement to improve vaccination coverage. This afternoon, Dr. Joyce Ducusin talked about supplemental immunization activities and the role of vaccines during outbreaks, and she focused mainly on polio eradication and measles vaccine eradication, as well as use of measles-containing vaccines. And finally, Engineer Luz Garcia talked about handling and storage of vaccines, as well as a comprehensive lecture on cold chain management. So that wrapped up our session for today, but there's more, and we're moving on to our Twilight Symposium. So we have 3 lectures that are in store for you. They're vignettes, just short lectures for the next hour. I will now turn over the mic to the other member of our scientific committee, Dr. Gwyneth Dizon. Thank you very much.
Our last activity for the day. We've had a very productive day behind us. So our last activity, our Twilight Symposium, will be divided into 3 parts, 3 mini lectures to be given by our experts. So to start off, the first lecture is entitled Immunizing the Adolescents. This will be given by our first lecturer, who is a full professor of pediatrics of the FEU Nicanor Reyes Medical Foundation. She is the head of the Department of Pediatrics of the Mary Child's Hospital, She's a member and a board of trustees and co-director of the CME and training of the PPS. She's the vice president of International Society of Tropical Pediatrics, the past president and advisor of Immunization Committee of the PIDSP. She's the chair, Hospital Accreditation Board, and co-chair of the Adult Immunization of the PISMID. She's also a consultant of the Pediatric Infectious Disease Section of the San Lazaro Hospital. She's a fellow of the PPS, PIDSP, and PIDSMID. Please let us all welcome the president of the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination, Dr. Maybe Monteliano.
Now, my talk or my task it will be to take up with you the adolescent immunizations. Okay? Okay. So, okay, adult immunization. We know very well that the adult population presents many challenges with regards to vaccinations. Teens, may have infrequent contact with medical services because of the belief that from a disease standpoint, adolescence is the healthiest period of one's life. I know everybody knows that for those pediatricians, most of your patients are not the adolescents, but the very young. Mostly, we love to see the newborns and the toddlers because these are the age group whom we vaccinate. And the teens, they really come only when they're sick. Okay, next please. So, there is this importance of continuing immunizations from, toddlers to school age group and to the adolescents. And immunizations for adolescents are not always recognized as being an important aspect of their health care. Now, however, there are points that each and every one of us should remember for adolescent immunizations. We do adolescent immunizations as a means of catch-up process to supplement, incomplete pediatric immunization schedule. So you finish off with your primary series of immunization and a booster, and then parents do no longer come back, and they will just come back when the adolescent gets sick. Now, if they have not completed their boosters, then you can do a catch-up immunization for them. Okay, because they have not completed their boosters at all, or maybe for the other vaccines that are really recommended to be given for them. So the other thing is also that for the adolescents, we do have adolescents that falls in the high-risk groups, meaning to say they have health conditions that put them at risk to get disease or to develop diseases, which can be prevented by vaccines. And of course, the last, which is the very most important thing, is that now we do have novel vaccines really addressing the needs of the adolescents. They were really exclusively developed for them. Okay. Now, even in developed countries, it has been recognized that these immunization rates for adolescents are really low. Okay? And this is exemplified by this graph. The solid line here represents the Tdap. This is the adolescent vaccine of tetanus, diphtheria, acellular pertussis. You can see that from the time it was licensed and incorporated in the immunization schedule, it steadily has gone up to about 80% of the percent of adolescents having received the vaccine. Now, if you look at the meningococcal conjugate vaccine, which again also has been developed for adolescents, okay? you will see that it has also a high uptake. However, for vaccines like the HPV, they had this initial slow uptake here for less than one dose, adolescents who have received the one dose of HPV vaccine. And this dotted line here, the wider one, has a low, these are the adolescents who have completed 3 doses of the HPV vaccine. Now you will say, how come this small broken lines here and that dot, what does this vaccine represent? This is also the HPV vaccine. But you will say, why is it that along the years, the coverage is low? Now this one represents the coverage for males because HPV vaccination for males is a routine vaccine that has been recommended by ACIP in the States. And remember, this slide is a national survey done in the United States. Okay? So that's why these two, this one here, 1, 2, these are for females for which HPV vaccine was first initially recommended as a routine vaccine. And subsequently, after about 2 years that it has been recommended for females, the male recommendation came out based on their studies. Okay? These are the new vaccines that has been developed. So you have the tetanus, diphtheria, acellular pertussis. This is a formulation for adolescents and adults. Okay. Now, this one in the middle is, what vaccine is this? Meningococcal conjugate vaccine. Okay. Containing the ACWY combination. And this one are the 2 vaccines that are for human papillomavirus, either bivalent or the quadrivalent vaccine. So these vaccines were really developed for adolescents, okay? But the recommendation has been already expanded up to adults, 64 years of age. Next, please. So meningococcal vaccines. Let's start first with taking it up. Meningococcal vaccine is not really new. We've had meningococcal vaccine, which has been a polysaccharide vaccine. That was the first vaccine that was developed. However, they are not immunogenic to children younger than 2 years of age, and therefore they were only given for 2 years and above for children and adults who have risk factors. Okay? And along the way, a conjugate vaccine was developed. And this is to address the incidence of meningococcal disease that was seen in adolescents. For those who have gone to college, first-year freshmen, students in the United States, there had been an increase in the incidence of meningococcal infection. So if you're going to look at this chart will show you that there are 2 peaks. The first peak is that this disease mostly has a high incidence in children under 1 year of age, and then the other peak is during the adolescents. So the first vaccine that was developed was the meningococcal conjugate vaccine for adolescents. So the study was designed for adolescents. So the recommendation was to give it as a routine vaccine in the United States at 11 years of age. Now, it is a routine vaccine in the States because they could show that the disease burden is there, okay? But for us in for the Philippines, we do not have any routine recommendation for the meningococcal conjugate vaccine except for high-risk groups, okay? So we don't have, and as I've said before, also for those who will go for a Hajj, because it's a requirement by the Saudi government that before you can join the Hajj or enter Saudi Arabia, you will have to get the vaccine because it is endemic for meningococcal infection. So this vaccine was developed for this age group, the adolescents, and it is recommended to be given at 11 years of age thereon, okay, up to 64 years of age. Now, initially, there was only one dose that was recommended. However, it has been shown that that the vaccine antibodies does not persist that long. And so that's why when they reach 16 years old, when they enter the college, where most of the students live in dormitories, they become at risk again of the meningococcal infection. And so a recommendation of a second dose is to be given before they enter college or before they reach 16 years of age. And if they receive the vaccine at 16 or between 21, they are supposed to receive only one dose. Okay? Next, please. Now, this is how your meningococcemia looks. It starts off as a macular rash. You have it as erythematous, and then it can evolve into becoming a purpuric rash and eventually ecchymosis. And sometimes it can even lead to a spontaneous cut-off or falling off of digits as a result of ischemia. Okay? So here is the schedule. A two-dose primary series of the conjugate vaccine is recommended to be given 2 months apart. Okay, this is generally for those who are at risk. Okay, now they can receive a repeat immunization between 3 to 5 years of age after they've completed the primary series, as long as they are continuously at risk. Now, as I've already said, a booster was recommended, or a second dose. It's because when it was recommended in 2005, it was only for one dose, thinking that it would last for 10 years, the antibodies or protection that it could afford. Well, currently, the data now suggests it wanes, and in most adolescents within 5 years. And so therefore, the recommendation of a booster at 16 years of age. Next, please. Okay, the next vaccine is the tetanus, diphtheria, acellular pertussis combination vaccine. So we give the vaccine to adolescents to protect them from these different diseases here. In children, you have the primary dose to be DTaP, okay? And then this DTaP can be given only up to around 7, but there is a preparation in the market that you can give it up to 13 years of age. However, when the development of the adult tetanus, diphtheria, acellular pertussis vaccine came into being, that vaccine now has been recommended to be given at the adolescent age group. Again, the United States chooses the 11 years old as their age group. With the Philippines, from the PIDS-P group, the recommended age for which the vaccine should be started to be given will be at 10 years of age. Now, this is for convenience because we recommend giving of tetanus, diphtheria every 10 years. So it's so easy for you to remember the 10 years of age. So if the child or the adolescent has not received the vaccine, okay, before 7 years of age, then you can opt to ask the parents to bring the child at 10 years of age to have the Tdap. Okay? Now, this will protect the adolescents and even all the members of the family, from the newborns who cannot be vaccinated with the DTP combination because they're too young to receive it. These are the newborns because we start vaccinating at 6 weeks of age. So for those who cannot receive it, they are at risk at getting the disease. Okay? Most specifically, the pertussis vaccine. So the Tdap here was developed so that the pertussis can be given. Okay, pertussis vaccine. So then, the recommendation to give the vaccine is at 10 years up to 64 years of age. Okay? So this covers then all the members in the family to get the vaccine, the pertussis especially, so that, as I've said, the newborn who cannot be vaccinated can be protected. And this is the recommendation of the Global Pertussis Initiative Group on a cocoon strategy. Cocoon strategy meaning to say all the members of the family, the grandparents, the siblings, the child care worker or giver who takes care of the newborn will protect the newborn from getting the vaccine, the disease before he gets the vaccine. Okay? Next, please. So what is the present recommendation of the TDAP? TDAP, you know, TDAP is to be given at one dose alone. Okay? So the primary series to get the pertussis is to give it with a DPT. Primary series, 3 doses with a booster at 1 year of age, and a second booster between 4 to 6 years of age, and then the third booster when they reach 10 years of age. So before, we did not have the TDAP. It was only TD that is recommended to be given every 10 years. Okay? Now that the TDAP is there, you have to give at least 1 dose of the TDAP in place of the TD. Okay? It seems that parang hindi nyo makuha. Because we've said tetanus and diphtheria is recommended to be given every 10 years. Okay? There's no recommendation for pertussis before this adult formulation of the pertussis vaccine. All pertussis vaccine were only recommended before 7 years of age. Beyond that, there has been no vaccine to address pertussis beyond that age group. Okay? And still, we're seeing pertussis beyond the 7 years. So therefore, we would like to protect these children who have not been immunized against it, who are partially immunized. No? And so this TDAP can cover for that. Now, so children 7 to 18 years who were not fully immunized should be given a single dose of TDAP. And then thereafter, every 10 years, you give the TD. Okay? Now, for those who have not been really immunized at all with DPT, has not received any primary series of the DPT, you can give the vaccination 1 TDAP, the initial, and then complete the series at 1 month after the TDAP and 6 months later for 2 doses of TD. Okay? So TDAP, 0 at the date that you elected to give the vaccine, that's 0. 1 month later, TD, and 6 months after TD. That's a complete series already of your immunization against tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. Okay, next, please. So next, please. Now, the next vaccine that has been developed is the human papillomavirus vaccine, which initially was developed to address cervical CA. Okay? That's really the purpose of developing the vaccine, to address that problem. There are 2 vaccines in the market. It's the bivalent, which contains the types 16 and 18, which is specifically to address cervical CA. The other vaccine contains quadrivalent types, and this is the 16 and 18, addressing again the cervical CA, but there are 2 types that have been added to address the extragenital lesions. These are the genital warts. Okay? Now, these are the different diseases that had been attributed to HPV. Okay? Human papillomavirus vaccine. And it has been said that HPV causes almost 100% of the cervical CA. However, serotype 16 and 18 only covers for 70% of the CAs. Okay, cervical CAs. So, vulvar cancer is also caused by human papillomavirus by about 40%, vagina, almost 60 to 90%, secondary to HPV. The anal cancer, about 80% of it. Genital warts, 100%. Okay. The oropharyngeal cancer, has a very wide range. You can have it between 12 to 70%, and the penile cancer is about 45% caused by your HPV. Next, please. So why do we need to vaccinate these adolescents against this disease? This disease manifests late in life. You can get the infection, but mostly the infection can spontaneously resolve by itself without doing anything. So about 80% of the infection will just resolve. You don't know that you got it. Only 20% will persist. And this 20% that can persist can lead on to develop into cervical CA. Okay? And to the other CAs that may be related to the serotypes that we mentioned already. Of course, there are other serotypes that causes cervical CA other than the 16 and 18. 45, the serotype 45 is also prevalent in our country. That's the second most common cervical CA, serotype that causes cervical CA. Okay, next please. Now, always when we recommend a vaccine or a vaccine is placed into an immunization program, you always look into the disease burden. Why it has been recommended as a vaccine for adolescents is because they were able to show that the acquisition of HPV peaks during adolescence. Here, this age group. This is 15 years old, and as you can see, it peaks in that age group up to the age of 21. So this is for young adults as well. Okay? So up to 25 even. So these are the peak incidence, okay, of HPV infection. These two here lines, the broken blue line, represents the low risk squamous intraepithelial neoplasia, and this one here, the red low one, this is the high risk, the one likely to develop into a cervical CA. Next, please. Okay, I just would like to show you this picture just to explain why we need, it's not just the disease burden, why we need to vaccinate early for adolescents. There is a biological factor for that. During pre-puberty and during puberty, this is squamous epithelial, this is squamous columnar junction is generally seen pag pre-puberty. It's inside the cervix. It's an endocervical, what's this? Area. So it's inside the cervix. Okay? But when they become already in the pubertal stage, this comes down. And this is the area where you have metaplasia, active metaplasia ongoing. And this is where 99% of HPV-related general cancers arise from. Okay? And then as one goes into postmenopausal, this junction goes up again and it becomes an endocervical area. Okay? So that's why you will notice that the recommendation of the vaccine is generally in the young, and then you will always say, oh, bakit up to 26 years of age and up to 54? You know, as you age, everything shrinks the same manner as the cervix. I always say that. It shrinks, it goes up. So it's no longer available for the HPV to stay on. Okay? It's unlike when they are in the pubertal stage, that area is really accessible to have the HPV be there. Next, please. Now, this is just to show you that the vaccine has been recommended in about 27 countries, in almost all of these countries, as a vaccine to be given at 11 to 12 years of age. HPV vaccine is an adolescent vaccine. It is recommended for those who are beyond the age group where this is recommended as a catch-up vaccination. Okay? It's not a routine vaccine. Because most of you are saying, okay, bigyan natin kasi for the service. You know, this vaccine is supposed to be given before sexual activity is, initiated. So before a sexual debut, this vaccine is most effective. Diba? Kasi because this is supposed to be a vaccine, a prophylactic vaccine, not a therapeutic vaccine. Okay? So, next please. So, this is just to show you the precancerous lesions of the cervix peaks in young adolescents. So, this is here, okay? These are the age group. As you can see, it peaks there. This one, going up. These are the inside too, okay? And this is the invasive. You can see that the carcinoma inside too peaks at a young age group, but the invasive one starts going up as they age and then goes down again. So next please. Now this is just to show you that when you vaccinate the younger age group, because this vaccine has been studied to as young as 9 years old, okay? And it has been shown that the vaccine induced a high immune response, and if you can see, these are males and females. This represent the females, 10 to 15 years of age. These are the males, 10 to 15 years of age. And this one are the females in the cohort of the 16 to 23 years old who were given the vaccine for the HPV in the initial studies. And as you can see here, for all serotypes in the vaccine, the females and the males have a very high immune response, the younger ones. So it's just the same for any vaccine. The younger the vaccine is given, the more robust is the immune system, therefore the higher or the better is the immune response. As you age, the immune response also declines because of immunosenescence. So if you are going to look at it, these immune responses are even higher for those who receive the vaccine at 16 to 23 years of age. Next, please. Now, just to show you the PMS, this is the premarital sexual sex experiences of our youths by sex in the Philippines. From a YAPS study, you can see that from YAPS 2 to YAPS 3, there has been an increase in the percentage or prevalence of the PMS experience of our youth. You can see those. These are for females and these are for males. Next, please. Now, this is just to show you that, our young men, our 15 years old adolescent boys, okay, here, 15 to 19 and 20 to 24 have had multiple sex partners already. Okay? So that's why that recommendation to give the vaccine is to prevent them from acquiring the disease because it does have it peaks during this age group. So that's why just alone this one gives you already an evidence that you should really start your immunization against this infection. Next, please. So again, also the genital warts. This is just a report coming from England, Wales, in their genitourinary clinic, where they come in and have themselves be checked. And as you can see, the genital warts peaks during this age group, starts having reported cases at the age group of 15 years and peaks at this age group of 20 to 24. And therefore, this is really a disease of young people. Next, we do have a study that has been done. This is not yet published, okay? But just to show you, there is this prevalence of genital warts in the Philippines. The blue one is the overall prevalence or percentage of those males who've had the disease. And this one are the males, and this is the females, okay? Globally, the prevalence of genital warts is only 1%, but the Philippines has 5%, okay? The Philippines has a 5% prevalence of genital warts for these age groups. Okay, next. So, as with other vaccines, since all our vaccines are prophylactic, we vaccinate prior to exposure in order to help protect our patients. So, vaccinate at the first opportunity. So, most adolescent patients probably don't visit your office regularly. The ones that visit regularly are those in this age group, 1 to 2 years of age. Most of them, 100% of your patients in this age group come for a visit. Then 4 to 5, there is a decline in the percentage of your patients coming back for health care, visits. And then when they become adolescents, more so. Only about a little 50% maybe, but to me that's already very high because in my clinic, I don't see so much of the adolescents. Pero now that I am a senior citizen, I'm seeing the second and third generation coming from those adolescents who have grown already to become adults. Okay, next please. Okay, their lives can change between now and the next visit to a physician. So that's why we always say vaccinate at all opportunities, vaccinate all adolescents, vaccinate everybody because your lifestyle may change and may make you at risk for any of the diseases. Okay, next please. So the final message is that adolescent immunization rates do really lag behind childhood rates and that healthcare professionals should make every effort to provide the vaccines for routine administration to adolescents as well as their catch-up vaccinations for those who have not been fully immunized. In the absence of routine visits during adolescence, the absence of which should not deter healthcare providers from using other opportunities to cover them, okay? We usually, like sa Lazaro Hospital, before the patients leave the hospital, whatever vaccines they need, we give them. Okay? So this is before they are discharged. Pre-discharge vaccination. Because they are already captive patients. They're there. So you don't need to call them. They're there. Before they leave, give the vaccine. And when they are on sick visits, as long as there are no contraindications, mild infections, you can always vaccinate. Some missed opportunities for vaccination is that when they become sick, like last Monday, there were, patients who were coming in for vaccination and then they were saying, ay, may colds po ako. Pwede ho ba ako magpabakuna? Sinisipon mo ako ngayon. Inuubo ho ako ngayon. That's what they were asking. I said, okay, go ahead, you have your vaccine. So problem. Can I have a vaccine? Dalawa sabay? So this is for catch-up. You can give as many vaccines, as long as they can really pay for it or tolerate it, So, and then to provide vaccines. And then you educate and counsel every time there is a healthcare encounter. So please, see to it that all the vaccines are up to date in every visits that they come in. Most specifically for adolescents kasi they are vulnerable, but they feel they do not need the vaccine because they are very healthy. But because of risk-taking behavior, they may be at risk of getting these diseases. Okay? So, thank you for listening.
Note takers, if there are none, let's proceed to our next lecture. Thank you very much, Dr. May, and also to our friends from Merck, Shark, and Doom for making her lecture possible. Our next lecture is entitled Recommended Vaccines Not Currently Mandatory. This is brought to us by Novartis. Our speaker is the head of Novartis Vaccines and Diagnostics Clinical Research and Development. She is a practicing pediatric infectious disease specialist and a staunch vaccine advocate. Before her work in Novartis, she was a medical specialist at the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, where she did clinical trials in pediatric and rabies vaccines. She obtained her medical degree at the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila and had her residency training in pediatrics at the UPPGH. She also had her fellowship training in pediatric infectious disease at the same institution. She is presently a fellow of the Philippine Pediatric Society and Pediatric Infectious Disease Society of the Philippines, and a member of the Asian Society of Pediatric Infectious Diseases and Philippine Foundation for Vaccination. Let us all welcome Dr. Nancy Bernal.
Hello, thank you so much, and good evening, still good afternoon. So in behalf of Novartis, we would like to thank the organizing committee for giving us this opportunity to discuss with you two very important vaccines which are recommended but currently not available. I got so excited this morning because there were questions about rabies and there were also questions about meningo. So I'll try my best to discuss this very quickly and then have some time for question and answer. Okay, so as an overview, I shall be focusing on these two vaccines. And I know you're all familiar with our yearly updates on vaccination schedules. So we have in the front area the recommended vaccines, and I'll show you later in the back, there are some highlights about meningo and rabies vaccines. Okay, so we will be discussing the importance of utilizing meningococcal vaccines, especially about special population, and I'll be giving you some updates about rabies vaccination in the Philippines. Okay, so you're all familiar with this. So in the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination and the Pediatric PPS comes up with this yearly update, and I mentioned earlier that you will notice meningo and rabies vaccine is not included in the front page, okay? But we have here in the back, if you will try to review about our recommendation on meningococcal vaccine and rabies vaccines. Okay. So meningo, Dr. May has discussed very passionately about recommendations on meningococcal vaccines. And you know, meningococcemia is one disease which, if one Filipino is affected, will merit a lot of media coverage, no? Because of the high case fatality rate of this vaccine preventable diseases. Okay? So it's always in the headline. So the media is very much interested about this infectious diseases. So just as a review, you know that meningococcal disease is an invasive disease which is often manifested by or as sepsis, meningococcemia, or even meningitis. It has become a concern globally because of different epidemics happening worldwide, and this disease can occur at a rate of over 1% of population during epidemics. And the current vaccine solutions do not cover for all serogroups. So just as a review, I would like to highlight that the case fatality rate of this meningococcal disease is really very high, ranging from 10 to 14%, and there is difficulty in diagnosing this meningococcal infection. In fact, in RATM, so when a patient comes in with petechial rashes, you don't know if this is just a form of anaphylactoid reaction or this is secondary to an infectious disease. So it's true, no? It's difficult to diagnose unless the infection is full-blown. Okay? So just to show you the case fatality rate, if you compare it to other infectious diseases like diphtheria, pneumococcal pneumonia, polio, HIV meningitis, varicella, measles, and rotavirus, meningococcal infection has a very high fatality rate of 9 to 12%. So sometimes you will ask yourself, given this high fatality rate, why is meningococcal vaccination not part of the recommended? It's part of the recommended vaccine, but it's not mandatory, right? So I'm leaving this message up to you or on how you will discuss this with your patients. So just also as an overview, meningococcal infection is caused by Neisseria meningitidis, which is a gram-negative diplococcus, and this is strictly a human pathogen. I would like to focus also about the asymptomatic carriage. You don't know if you're carrying the bacteria in your body because the carrier stage prevalence is also very high, from 1 to 35%. And mostly the transmission is via respiratory secretions or sometimes direct contact. And you have an incubation period of 2 to 2 days from the time the patient is exposed to a primary patient. Okay. So, meningococcal serogroups, there are actually known 13 serogroups, but 5 main serogroups can cause majority of the diseases, such as meningococcal serogroup A, B, C, Y, W135, and Y. So you have to remember that there are 13 serogroups, but only 5 can cause majority of our problems. So just to discuss again, or to highlight that it's actually difficult to diagnose, we all get excited, especially the residents, pag nakakita sila ng petechial rashes, rule out meningococcal infections, okay? So just to highlight with you, the rash can be maculopapular, sometimes with scanty petechiae, or you can see here the classic petechial purpuric rash of meningococcal infections. So usually yan yung tinitignan natin palagi, no? Yung the presence of rash. But in meningococcal meningitis, this rash can be left unnoticed or sometimes wala pa. No? So that makes it a little difficult to diagnose this infectious disease. And I would like to share with you the different skin manifestations of meningococcal infection, from a very mild purpuric rash to very severe, no? Yung mga cutaneous manifestations of meningococcal infections. Okay? Sometimes leading to amputation. No? In worst cases, this can lead to amputations. Sorry. Okay, so having discussed this, no, even with appropriate treatment and intensive care, we have a very high case fatality rate. That's why it gives the media a very good story because of this high fatality rate. No? But so just in case the patient survives, they can have impaired motor function, sometimes cognitive problems in cognitive ability, or even behavioral sequelae. And the healthcare cost is really substantial. And I know our colleagues in Baguio had this very sad experience when they had this epidemic in 2004 and 2005. And this is considered one of the Baguio outbreak is considered one of the biggest news in that time. And if you look at the deaths, no, based from age, you notice that older people, no, older patients will have higher mortality rate as compared to the younger patients, no, maybe because of the immunocompromised states of this older population as compared to the younger patients. So I would also like to highlight the asymptomatic carriage because they can be the source of infection. So asymptomatic carriage, the prevalence is around 10 to 25%, and the duration of carriage is not fully understood. No? If you can eradicate that bacteria in your system, so we don't know. If you will carry this throughout your life, we don't know also. But the factors that predict the progression from carriage to invasive disease is also not clear. So we can only hypothesize that if the immune system of a person carrying the bacteria weakens, then that can trigger invasive meningococcal infection. I have mentioned earlier about the outbreaks which happened in Baguio. That was in 2005. Okay, so just to show you that meningococcal infection is actually a problem here in the Philippines. No? So this data came from I can share with you the data about in 2009, 2010. So we have more or less 140 cases of meningococcal infections. And most of the cases were diagnosed in National Capital Region. But out of these about 140%, only 5% were confirmed cases, no? Because also of the difficulty of getting your samples to identify definite diagnosis of your meningococcal infections. This one is the outbreak which happened in Baguio. So it ranged from 2005 and 2006, and I know this has been a great problem, not only in Baguio, but the entire country as well. So just to summarize, no, meningococcal infection is easily transmitted. It is difficult to diagnose the infection. You're lucky if you can pick up the infection earlier, but it is rapidly progressing and potentially fatal as well. So what do we do in order to prevent these infections? So we should avoid identified risk factors such as overcrowding. Smoking is also an identified risk factors, and of course, maintenance of good hygiene is always, you have to maintain good hygiene in order to prevent not only meningococcal infection, but also other infectious diseases. And antibiotic prophylaxis for those who are exposed, no? Ito actually, much cost is put into this once one patient is diagnosed to have meningococcal infection. No? So prophylactic antibiotics can be recommended or can be given to those who are exposed, such as rifampicin, at a dose of 10 milligram per kilo per dose every 12 hours for 2 days. Or you can use ceftriaxone for patients or exposed people less than 15 years of age. You can give 125 milligrams as a single dose. And for patients more than 15 years old, you can give 250 milligrams also a single dose. Other antibiotics that can be given as prophylaxis are ciprofloxacin and azithromycin. Of course, we don't want this to happen, or that you'll be given any prophylaxis. So the best, I think, to prevent meningococcal infection is through vaccination. And you know that there are 2 available types of meningococcal vaccine in the market, which are the polysaccharide vaccine and the conjugate vaccine. So the meningococcal vaccine has been available even in the 1970s, and new discoveries to improve response to vaccines has been developed, also for meningococcal vaccine, wherein vaccines are conjugated to a carrier protein. And in 2005, Novartis licensed the vaccine Menveo, which is a quadrivalent meningococcal vaccine conjugated to CREM 197. So initially, the vaccine is licensed only for adolescents 11 to 12 years and up. However, in 2007, the age indication for Menveo, or the meningococcal quadrivalent conjugate vaccine, has expanded to younger children from 2 years and up. So I'll be sharing with you key data on the safety and immunogenicity of this quadrivalent conjugate vaccine. So there were several studies that were done to prove the safety and immunogenicity of our meningococcal conjugate vaccine. So studies were done involving younger children from 0 to 12 months of age, children 12 to 23 months of age, even adolescents. So what were the results? If you compare the immune responses from conjugate vaccines versus the polysaccharide vaccine, so obviously the meningococcal conjugate vaccine elicited higher responses, no? 1 month after the vaccine was given, and even 12 months after the vaccine is given, as compared to the responses elicited from a polysaccharide vaccine. So obviously, with conjugation, we can improve the antibody responses from these vaccines. So even for adolescents, meningococcal conjugate vaccine elicited higher immune responses as compared to the polysaccharide vaccine. Obviously, again, you know that conjugate vaccine elicits better antibody response as compared to your polysaccharide vaccine, as also shown in the study done with Menveo versus the meningococcal polysaccharide vaccine. And if you look at the immune responses comparing the quadrivalent vaccine conjugated to CREM versus the quadrivalent vaccine conjugated to diphtheria protein, you can notice that the immune responses for 2 to 5 years and 6 to 10 years old patients are actually comparable and slightly higher if you look at serogroup C, W135, and for Y, serogroup Y. What about for patients, for patients, there's zero response rate for adolescent age group, comparing the Menveo, which is the quadrivalent conjugated to CREM, versus those given the quadrivalent conjugated to diphtheria. The same results were seen for those given in the younger age group. So what I'm saying here is, you can actually have better seroresponses or more seroresponders for all serogroups, A, C, W135, and Y, for adolescent population who were given the quadrivalent conjugated to CREM. That's for all serotypes or serogroups. Okay. Now for adults, what are the response rates for adults if you compare the quadrivalent conjugated to CREM versus the quadrivalent conjugated to D protein? So if you look at this, the responses are actually comparable for adults, But for adolescents, the CREM 197 quadrivalent vaccine elicited higher responses for all serogroups. So of course, you'll be interested to know what are the safety profile of this quadrivalent conjugated to CREM 197. So if you notice, in terms of local reactions, such as pain, erythema, induration, the incidence of these reactions are comparable between the two quadrivalent conjugate vaccines for this age group, yung 2 to 3 years old, the same safety profile for both conjugate vaccines. So having said this, we can give you better confidence because of the robust data looking at the immune responses and even the safety profile of quadrivalent conjugate to CREM 197. So this is the recommendation of PFD in terms of meningococcal vaccine. This is not part of the recommended routine immunization, but you can give this to patients who are at high risk. So Dr. Mantellano has discussed this earlier. And I would just also like to highlight that the PSMID has also given their recommendation as to this meningococcal conjugate vaccine. And I would like to highlight that you can give this vaccine to all those who wish to decrease their risk of meningococcal infection. So I think that's everybody. You don't like to be infected with meningococcal vaccine. So even if you are immunocompetent, but there's a risk that you get this infection, you can always get this vaccine. Okay, so in summary, we have discussed that meningococcal disease is a problem with very high case fatality rate, and conjugate vaccine is available for use, And this is actually recommended for high risk and for all those who wish to decrease their risk of getting the meningococcal infections. Okay, so moving on, I would just like to discuss with you what are the current updates in terms of rabies recommendation. So to highlight, rabies is 100% fatal disease. That's why we have to always focus, not only in giving the post-exposure prophylaxis, but also giving the pre-exposure prophylaxis. So we have a DOH guideline pertaining to the management guidelines of animal bite exposures, and the recent guideline came out in February 2011, and I will be discussing what are the contents of this updated recommendation. Okay, so rabies prevention focuses on two control measures. Not only human rabies control measures, but more importantly, we have to address how to control animal rabies. Otherwise, we cannot eradicate human rabies if we will not be addressing animal rabies control measures. So when we talk about human rabies control, there are two ways. First is the PEP, or the post-exposure prophylaxis, wherein individuals who have been exposed to animal bites, like cat or dog bites, should be given post-exposure prophylaxis. And another way to control rabies is by giving your pre-exposure prophylaxis, or the PrEP, wherein patients or subjects are given vaccines before exposure, and also this is recommended for high-risk individuals. So what are the updates in the management of animal bite? Before exposures in the head and neck, so you categorize it. It's a mild bite, you categorize it as category 3. But now, with the updated recommendation, all bites in the head and neck area are considered category 3. And if it's a category 3, these patients should be given both the immunoglobulin and the vaccine. Okay? Also, licks on broken skin, which used to be categorized as category 2, is now elevated to category 3, meaning you also have to give your vaccine and immunoglobulin for exposures like licks on broken skin. Okay, so how do we give? So you know that there is the intradermal route of giving your post-exposure prophylaxis. You give 2 intradermal, 2 sites, 0.1 ml, on day 0, day 3, day 7, and day 28. So that's for your post-exposure prophylaxis. But recently, there is an updated regimen using 4-site intradermal regimen, where 0.1 ml on 4 sites are given on day 0, also 4 sites on day 3, and 4 sites on day 4. So if you notice, this is a shorter schedule. So you can complete the post-exposure prophylaxis in 1 week's time. So that's good in terms of compliance. But what about the cost? So there could be some issues with regards to the cost, but the best advantage of this updated 4-site intradermal regimen is better compliance, because they can finish the post-exposure prophylaxis in a week's time. Okay. Another update that I would like to share with you is potentially, we can have these monoclonal antibodies to replace your equine rabies immunoglobulin, which is recommended for all category 3 bites. So currently, clinical trials are being done for these monoclonal antibodies, which can be an alternative for rabies immunoglobulin. Okay, so just to highlight with you, for all category 3 bites, this bite should be given both the vaccine and the immunoglobulin. So what is the importance of giving your both, not your immunoglobulin and your vaccine. So your rig provides immediate protection, but short-lived with a half-life of 21 days. So you can have immediate protection if you give your rig, but the protection wanes, no, with a half-life of 21 days. So you have to have something, no, to sustain the antibody levels, and this can be provided by your vaccine. So if you notice, the half-life of rig, so you can have fast protection and develop faster protection, but it wanes in a month's time. And you know that the incubation period of rabies can be from 1 month or even for years, so you need to have protection with your vaccine. Okay? So with your vaccine, the protective antibody levels start to appear after 7 days from the time you give the vaccine, and this can be sustained for a longer periods. That's why you need to give both the vaccine and immunoglobulin for category 3 bites. So you're all aware that there are a lot of rabies vaccines now available in the market. But according to this guideline, registered vaccines approved by FDA should only be used, no, for pre-exposure as well as post-exposure prophylaxis. And the regimens that you can be used should be the one recommended, so you can use the updated 2-site intradermal regimen. You can also use the 5-dose IM regimen or the 2-1-1 regimen and the 8-site ID regimen. And the vaccine potency, so you can check this, no? Vaccine potency should be at least 2.5 IU per dose for IM, so if you want to use the IM administration. And for ID, it should be at least 0.5 IU per dose. So you can check the product inserts, or you can ask your friends in the industry about this data on vaccine potency. Okay. So for the updated 2-site ID regimen, so before, di ba hanggang kay day 90 tayo, na 1 site. But for the updated regimen, so you give 2 sites on day 0, 2 sites day 3, 2 sites on day 7, and 2 sites also on day 28 or day 30. So ID dose is 0.1 ml per site. And for the 5-dose IM regimen, so you give the entire amount of the vaccine on day 0, day 3, day 7, 14, and day 28. So you can either use the PCECE, the 1 ml, or the PVRV 0.5 ml for both actually your ID and IM regimen. So alternative regimens, I've mentioned about the 4-dose IM, so this is an update. The 2-1-1 IM regimen also, and the 8-site intradermal regimen. So for the 4-dose IM, binawasan na yung day 30. No? So for the 4-dose, you give the entire amount of the vaccine on day 0, day 3, day 7, day 14, minus the day 28. But this should be given only for healthy, immunocompetent, exposed people who receive wound care plus high-quality rig recommended by the WHO. Okay? So the basis for this recommendation, removing the day 30 for your IM regimen, is based on the rabies virus pathogenesis, data on clinical trials, and of course, economic analysis. Although now in the Philippines, we still use the 5-dose IM regimen. But if your patient are immunocompetent, healthy, and you have given the right rabies immunoglobulin, you can actually make use of this 4-dose IM regimen. So the 2-1-1 IM regimen, you give the full dose of the vaccine, 2 sites on day 0, and 1 on day 7, and 1 on day 21. So you can use both the PCEC, which is Rabipure, and the PVRV. So what about how do you manage patients, patients who have received the complete pre-exposure regimen? So kung meron na siyang history of vaccination in the past and now re-exposed, so how do we manage? Okay? For those patients who receive the complete pre-exposure prophylaxis, so pag sinabi natin pre-exposure, wala pa siyang bite, and you have given the vaccine on day 0, day 7, and day 21 or 28 completed, and now re-exposed. And now re-exposed. So what do? You will just give a booster dose, no? You give 0.18 ml IV dose at one site, each on day 0 and day 3. Okay? So if you want to use the IM regimen, pareho din, full dose on day 0 and day 3. For those who have completed the pre-exposure or receive at least day 0, day 3, day 7, whether ID or IM, using the rabies vaccine, yung PCEC, and the PVRV. So the same management. So that is the advantage of getting the pre-exposure prophylaxis. Once exposed, you only need to give the patient a booster dose on day 0 and day 3. No need to give your immunoglobulin even if the bite is category 3. But if the patient did not complete the 3-dose pre-exposure, or patient only received 1 or 2 ID or IM dose of the post-exposure prophylaxis, you have to give RIG if indicated. That means if the bite is category 3, you have to give the RIG plus the full course of the post-exposure prophylaxis. Okay, so I hope that's clear. How to manage a patient who has been re-exposed but who has received rabies vaccine in the past. Okay. So what about, or which animal bite should be given post-exposure prophylaxis? Okay. So obviously you know that all dog and cat bites should be given post-exposure prophylaxis. Also, other domestic animals such as bites by cattle, pigs, horses, monkeys, and other wild animals should be given post-exposure prophylaxis. But no post-exposure prophylaxis is recommended for rat bites, rodent bites, rabbits, and guinea pig bites. So you only give tetanus prophylaxis for these bites. So therefore, you don't categorize, no? Because categorization is important only for those bites who will require post-exposure prophylaxis. Now, this was the question this morning on how to address bites if the biting animal has been vaccinated. So, before the committee came up with the recommendation, they discussed what are the issues before giving the recommendation. For previously vaccinated animals, so yung issue ng mga vets, if you will continue vaccinating, even if the dog or the dog has been vaccinated, so what happens? No? Parang naging useless yung dog vaccination. Okay? And what happens to the original recommendation of observing for 14 days? No? Especially if the biting animal has received vaccination. Okay? So, ang issue naman ng mga physician, we want to make sure na this animal, these dogs, has updated vaccination, documented vaccination. How can we also ensure that the anti-rabies vaccination of these dogs are updated? So baka sinasabi lang na, ay, meron yung bakuna, meron yung pa palang, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago. So that's one concern. And also, how sure are we that animal seroconverted after vaccination? Of course, there's no way of finding na pag binakunahan mo yung dog, that dog is 100% protected from rabies. Okay? So there are also vaccine failures in dog vaccinations, the same way as vaccination in humans. No? Hindi siya 100% protective. Of course, we also don't know about our vet friends do their cold chain management. And of course, the animal status of the status of the animal at the time of the bite, and the vaccination technique. So these were the concerns of both the vets and the doctors, which are all valid. But fortunately, they came up with this recommendation. Hindi pala masyadong kita. So for bites by vaccinated dogs or cats, no, post-exposure prophylaxis is not recommended for Category 1 exposure. So alam niyo na yung mga Category 1. No? Let's say, feeding lang ng dog, touching, so Category 1, so no post-exposure prophylaxis is given. But post-exposure prophylaxis can be delayed, okay? Can be delayed for Category 2 bites, provided that all of these conditions are satisfied. So, pag 1, wala. Pag 2, you can observe, you can delay the post-exposure prophylaxis provided that the dog or cat is healthy and available for observation for 14 days. So, kung stray dog yan, wala na. You can give the post-exposure prophylaxis. Pero kung ma-observe, you can still wait if the dog is vaccinated. And the vaccination status of the dog should be valid in 2 years. Kailangan meron siyang complete vaccination for the past 2 years, and the dog must be at least 1 year and 6 months old with updated vaccination certificate from a duly licensed veterinarian for the last 2 years. So dapat duly licensed at makita talaga natin yung vaccination record ng dog. Okay? Para ma-delay mo, you can decide delaying the post-exposure prophylaxis. And the last vaccination must be within the past 12 months during the time of the bite. And the immunization status of the dog will not be considered updated if the animal is not vaccinated on the due date of the next vaccination. So, meaning if the due date is today and the bite was sustained 1 week after, even if the owner insists that the dog is vaccinated, you should still give post-exposure prophylaxis. But if the animal becomes sick or dies within the observation period, post-exposure prophylaxis should be started immediately. So this is for Category 2 bites. So you can observe provided you have met all these conditions, but during the observation period, the animal becomes sick or died or nawalang bigla. No? So you should start the post-exposure prophylaxis immediately. However, even if the dog has complete vaccination record, but the category of the bite is Category 3, and the dog is proven rabies, sick, with no laboratory exam for rabies, and is not available for observation, then we have to give post-exposure prophylaxis immediately. And then, the dog is involved in at least 3 biting incidents within 24 hours, meaning rabies na talaga siya. So it happens na in one day, the biting animal or the dog can bite several victims. So that is a clue for you to institute post-exposure prophylaxis immediately. And the dog or cat manifests behavioral changes suggestive of rabies during or after the biting incident, then you have to institute post-exposure prophylaxis immediately. Now, that is for, we have tackled the issue on how do you address if the person bitten has received prophylaxis in the past. We have addressed the issue if the biting animal has been vaccinated. So now I would just like to discuss a little bit on pre-exposure prophylaxis, meaning before a bite is sustained, this rabies vaccine is being given. No? So there are target populations for pre-exposure prophylaxis, such as personnel in rabies diagnostic lab, vets, animal handlers, healthcare workers involved in care of rabies patients, or individuals directly involved in rabies control, field workers such as yung mga Meralco bill guys, no, yung mga nagde-deliver ng mga bills, yung mga field workers, they should be given pre-exposure prophylaxis. And the Rabies Act of 2007 also provides for pre-exposure immunization of children 5 to 14 years of age living in highly endemic area or with high incidence of rabies. But with a very busy immunization recommendation, I know you can always give pre-exposure prophylaxis for your patients or even for your relatives. No? I think the most important advantage of giving pre-exposure prophylaxis is the cost. No? If you have completed pre-exposure and then a bite is sustained, especially if it's a category 3 bite, the victim did not receive the rabies immunoglobulin and be spared of the pain because the rabies immunoglobulin should be injected at the site of the bite. And of course, the cost, no? Kasi two booster dose na yung kailangan niya. So I would highly recommend giving pre-exposure prophylaxis to your patients, most especially to your children or to your relatives. Okay? So the pre-exposure prophylaxis you give, if you want to use the intradermal regimen, you give 0.1 ml, one site on day 0, day 7, day 21 or day 28, but if you want to use the IM, kasi isa lang yung gagamit, no? Because once open, the vaccine should be consumed within 6 to 8 hours. So kung isa lang yung bibigyan mo ng pre-exposure prophylaxis, it is recommended to use the entire amount. So IM na siya on day 0, day 7, and day 28, 21 or 28. Okay, so booster doses. So ito, isang issue din to. Binubooster pa ba ang rabies vaccine? No? Booster doses is recommended only for those with continuous and frequent risks, but is not recommended for the general population. So in the event of the exposure, let's say yung pre-exposure mo or post-exposure prophylaxis, you were able to get it 10 years ago, and now you sustained a bite, so you only need to get booster doses, no? On day 0 and day 3. Okay, so this is my last slide. So the routine booster dose for previously immunized individuals, so I would like to highlight, this is not recommended for the general population, but recommended only, no, for workers with in the rabies lab, so they need to get it every 6 months. For vets, they need to get booster doses every 2 years. For general population, no need to give booster, but for re-exposure, we just give booster doses, one site on day 0 and day 3. Okay, so having said this, I hope I was able to impart with you that meningococcal vaccine and rabies vaccine, although they are not mandatory vaccine, but I think there is a need that these two vaccines should be given routinely if you have the opportunity. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much and wishing you in advance a Merry Christmas.
Graduate of Cebu Institute of Medicine. He had his residency training in pediatrics at Chonghua Hospital, Cebu, and his fellowship training in pediatric infectious diseases at the UP PGH. He is the immediate past president of the Philippine Society of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases Cebu chapter and is presently the secretary of the Department of Pediatrics of Chonghua Hospital, Cebu. He is also currently involved in phase 3 vaccine and antifungal trials, and he is a fellow of the PPS and the PIDSP. Please, let us all welcome Dr. Jonathan G. Lim to give us a lecture on vaccination and preventing pneumococcal diseases.